talk a little bit about the impact the series had on neighborhoods around some of the schools, because I think there's a big push among education reporters and education reporting associations to report more broadly that what happens in the neighborhood impacts the schools, and what happens inside the schools impacts neighborhoods. And those connections are very rarely made. And the Obama administration has some initiatives that are about to be released that would encourage stronger collaboration between neighborhoods, nonprofits, faith-based organizations. But do talk a little bit about the reaction that has come your way as a result of this from the community and then the schools, parents, students.
Well, the school district immediately reacted to the story by worrying that the information we put out would cause a kind of an attack on individual schools by parents who wanted to either get a particular teacher or not get a particular teacher, and they thought that the schools would be inundated by frazzled, angry parents. It didn't turn out to be true, actually. My own experience, I have been a reporter in Los Angeles for a long time, and I stay in touch with some groups. I was invited to speak to the Community Coalition, which is an organization in South Los Angeles that has been following schools for a long time, trying to expose issues with schooling in South Los Angeles. And at the end of the presentation, one woman stood up and gave a really tearful talk, essentially just thanking us for giving her this information. And she said that she had been trying to place her kids in LA School District for 2 years and could never get any information about the quality of teaching. And she just almost broke down in tears thanking us, which I think is, for us as journalists, our real connection is with our readers, and those are the people that we do our work for, and it's comments like those that tell us what our readers think that are most important to us.
At the same time, there's been a huge outcry, protest from some teachers and the teachers' union about the unfairness of what we did, and that it was, that in essence they felt that we were naming and shaming teachers, and it was too harsh and unfair, and that the methodology we used was flawed, and that standardized tests are no good and don't really measure anything of value, and that putting that information out there in the public domain was something that we don't do for other public employees, and something that is unfair to do for public school teachers. A lot of the reaction from teachers was, don't blame me for my students' performance, blame their parents. Blame the students who aren't coming to class every day or who aren't trying hard. Don't hold me accountable for how my kids do. That's on them. That's not on me.
With this value added, a reconfiguration of how we use these tests to gauge student achievement or school success, doesn't that minimize the student who misses days of school, or parents who may not be engaged in the lives of their children?
Yeah, so one could make a case that teachers should love value added, because as opposed to other measures, it holds teachers accountable for the things they can control and tries to not judge them on the things they can't control. So
it de-emphasizes these elements of absenteeism and the parental.
Right. So parents, teachers reasonably feel like, look, if I am teaching a class full of limited English kids who came to this country recently and are far behind their peers, I don't want to be punished for that. I don't want to be punished for teaching kids who grew up in poverty as opposed to a wealthy community. And those teachers should love value added, because what value added does is it doesn't judge, you compared to you, because we know that you two have very different backgrounds and grew up in different communities and have all kind of different issues in your lives that are going to affect how you do in school. So we don't compare you to you on performance, which is what most tests do, right? What we do is we say, how did you do compared to how you did last year? And if last year is a judge of, you know, the benefit of doing that is that last year you faced a lot of the same challenges that you faced in prior years that, you know, I'm not going to pick on you anymore, but let's say a student, you know, had a mother who, you know, had 3 jobs, or had a father who was in prison, or whatever challenges a kid faces outside of school. Well, that is going to make it harder for that kid to make progress because they've got all kinds of other stuff going on. Well, we judge that kid only against his own prior performance. The strength of doing that is that teachers are not being held accountable for who they teach. They're being accountable for how much growth they get out of whatever kids they get. So that's a far more fair system than, for example, the API, which has a similar bar for everybody regardless of where you grew up. Despite that, you know, we got a lot of pushback on this approach. I think a lot, you know, what we found is that this concept of controlling for prior performance and controlling, it's a difficult concept to get. The statistics in this are very complicated. You know, I've wished many times while doing this story that I'd paid more attention when I was your age and later in college, because this stuff's way over my head in a lot of ways, the statistics. I mean, that's why we had to hire an expert who's like a PhD economist to do the numbers, because it's really hard to get. One of the products of it being really complicated is that people are suspicious of it and they're scared of it, and it's hard to kind of walk people through how it works. You can do it, but it takes time.
That's why this explanation, what value added means and what it's about, and is a very helpful primer before you begin reading the stories, I think. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.